Jumbo fellow adventurers, it's Mike Dooley. Time to dive into the fray of COVID passports. To have or not to have, to be or not to be. This is a really hot button topic right now. And I think I'm going to be able to kind of play both ends to the middle to give both sides something to think about. That is my heartfelt desire right now. It is a little simpler than we're making it out to be, although right now, science and evidence are kind of hanging in the balance, and it's really hard to know whether we're on the mend or on the verge of seeing things get worse. So here are the considerations, 5 considerations for you to take to heart, to swirl in your mind as you doze off, walk the dog, or whenever it is you let thoughts swirl in your mind. By the way, thanks for the questions. This one is Mike, please speak to COVID passports. The first thing that anyone and everyone ought to do, no matter what your nationality, is to truly see the predicament. Okay, what's going on? Why are there these discussions? And you've got to use science, because it's pretty much all we have, and evidence as your guide. Okay, and the science and the evidence are still being collected right now, so we can't really call that shot today in most quarters. But to anyone who once thought, and maybe still thinks, that COVID is the flu, the science has proven this is wildly more contagious than the flu and wildly more deadly than the flu. Now, I know that's debatable, and I'm not saying go get a passport and that we should do passports. But please, we've got to see the simple truths that are being laid bare and being reacted to by every government on the planet, both from the left political spectrum and the right political spectrum. There's something going on here that has been humongous. Not that we've dealt with it properly, but we need to respect and honor that this is a place we have never been to before. And so whitewashing it with something like, oh, we can never do this, or we should never do that, is extremely naive. We must see the predicament as it stacks up in terms of science and the evidence that supports that science. Okay, there's a lot of science out there with no evidence. That's not science. That's opinion news channels. Okay, so first, see the problem, and no, you don't know where this is going. So please don't think I've picked sides here. Number 2, if, as we're seeing now, we are on the cusp of achieving what medicine calls herd immunity, and or if for unknown reasons, perhaps the virus, COVID, is in the retreat, is scaling down. Now, you might say this is because of vaccinations, and you may well be right. There is evidence to support that. But the point is, if we're approaching herd immunity, and we're really literally on the cusp of it, might be happening, any month right now, and or the disease, the virus is on the retreat, then absolutely no way in the world should we go near a COVID passport. Okay, because for obvious reasons, it's going to drive a huge wedge between an already segregated global population. And it doesn't matter if it's the vaccine that brought us here. If we've achieved herd immunity, and right now the risks are receding, I'm not saying that is the case, but if that's where we're at, or in 3 weeks or in 3 months we see that that's where we're at, then no way should we go there. And if those who didn't get a vaccine are benefiting because of those who did, that's just hyperbole and hypothetical, so be it. We do not want to go to a place where we have more rules and more laws. If, on the other hand, we continue to have flare-ups, we do not approach herd immunity, the virus is not receding, then we must seriously consider what our options are, and I would say we would then move forward recognizing the severity of the predicament with extremely tempered rules with regard to passport issuance, with built-in safeguards and expiration dates, whether it be a year or 5 years or 10 years. I don't know, whatever the science would say. 10 years seems a bit extreme. Obviously, these kind of government programs are hard to undo for the best of reasons, because people want to ensure that their citizens are covered, but they can be taken advantage of. If we find we're not at herd immunity and the disease is not retreating, then we need to discuss in a much more public domain the possibilities for a passport or the like with built-in safeguards, extremely tempered, and an option to have it expire. That's number 3. Number 4, I also believe if time allows, and this is a big if and it's not known if it can happen, I also believe if time allows, there ought to be some type of voting mechanism by popular vote in the parts of the world where a COVID passport is being considered, so that the individuals can decide whether or not they want it, and not just the politicians. Because too often, bizarrely, even in a democracy, politicians don't always represent the majority. So if we can have the individuals make that decision and factor in on the safeguards and the limited nature of a passport, then I think we need to do a popular survey, a popular vote. I know there's a word for that, but it's been escaping me all day. And then number 5, and this is what I think is most missing, and this is what I think is an unfortunate reflection of kind of where we are as a society right now. If we need to move in these directions, and we're going to have to rely, based on a popular vote, to get the government involved, we need to do it with trust. We need to trust our brothers and sisters, our fellow citizens, aka the government. I know that governments historically, whether it was Nazi Germany or those who imposed the Jim Crow laws in the United States, have done horrific misdeeds, culpable for murder and mayhem. But as a note from the universe once said, the more you distrust others, life, entities, whatever, the more you distrust, the more you attract the untrustworthy. I know that goes against everything our physical senses have taught us. I know that goes against a lot of specific examples in the world to this day where governments have done vile, horrible things. But today is not yesterday, and tomorrow is going to be better than today. And we are on an upward spiral into the light, into truth, into transparency, recognizing that everyone, no matter which side of the political spectrum they're on, no matter how extreme their views, in their own way, is doing their best to make the world a better place. I know that hurts to believe, but it is almost always true. And yes, it's used to commit offenses, but more often it's used to do good. And so if we can begin trusting one another, and we can begin realizing that everyone's values for freedom are equally important, and while you might find a COVID passport infringing on your freedom if you decide not to get one, what about the other people who are afraid of the infringement of death and mayhem caused by a disease that is going unchecked? If more people's freedoms are limited by a rampant, highly contagious disease, then are people who are afraid of not being able to enjoy their life because they're not getting a COVID passport, then these folks, the majority, need to prevail. It's just as simple as that. Anyway, so I hope I've walked both lines carefully, and I hope I've given you food for thought. That's all I ever want to do. You get to make all these kind of decisions for yourself. But the last point is the one I would really like to leave you with. If we operate thinking that the government is the enemy, while they have often been the enemy, then we will continue to perpetuate the fact that they are the enemy. They're not the enemy. In fact, you can go run for a political office right now, and you ought to do it, and you ought to hear every side of every equation. Begin with love. Begin with trust. See the predicament that we're facing. Maybe you're not facing it, but other people are facing it on both sides of the spectrum. To have a passport or not to have a passport. To have the disease or not to have the disease. Everyone's doing their best. If we cooperate instead of compete, we will go so much farther, faster, more harmoniously, loved and in love. All right, fellow adventurers, don't forget to sign up for the 21-day adventure into discovering and monetizing your side hustle. Everyone's got a side hustle. It's your dance with life. And if you're not sure what yours is, let me teach you how to create space so that yours finds you. You don't even have to name it. And once you find it, let me share with you how to monetize it, because I've been working side hustles for 33 years. So click below. It's a price you choose between $35, $45, $39, $49, $59, or $69. This is 21 lessons delivered to your inbox every day, a video of me, 5 to 10 minutes, plus 4 90-minute workshops where I'll be answering as many questions as I can from the thousands of participants, plus a downloadable workbook, worksheet, so you can integrate what you're learning. It's fun, plus a huge community on Facebook if you trust the Facebook community. You're going to get notes from the universe on the weekend if you don't already during these 21 days. So for $39, money back guarantee, the only mistake you could make is not signing up. Okay, I really believe that. I want this to serve you. If it's not good for you, it's not good for me. I don't want your money. Okay, if it is good for you, it will be good for me. Tally-ho, amigos. Muchas gracias. Hasta pronto. Okay, who we got? Mary Catherine, Tracy, Sandra, Kaz. Glad you're here. Charmin. Glad you're here. Vic, Ashen, and Christina. Okay, see you tomorrow.